And she like cuts me off and she's like, oh, Jordan. It was so awkward. Like I didn't know what to do. I don't know what I did to step on her toes. She's literally screaming at me. Like she's screaming. Hello, I have some tea for you guys. If you're new here, my name is Jo Stotts. Welcome to the channel. You should totally subscribe. I am gonna mention that I am not gonna talk about the company. I'm not gonna talk about who the person was or anything like that out of respect. I don't wanna like, you know, throw any names under the bus. We are here to talk about my most recent interview with a beautiful company that I never would expected the manager to be like over this company. It is a faith-based company, a super pretty store, the whole shebang. And I'm like, oh, you know, this place is hiring. I've been here a couple times. It's such a cute store. And so I applied. Well, 3 days later, I get a call and they want to schedule an interview with me the next day. That is really fast to me. Normally, I wouldn't get callbacks to like 1 to 2 weeks, but it was literally like 3 days after I submitted the application. They were interested. They're like, please come in. We're hiring like urgently. So in my head, I'm like, this is it. You know, finally, I scheduled the interview for the very next day and I'm ready to go. I got my cute little outfit ready to go. Even Zach is like, I have a good feeling about this, which by the way, he was lying to make me feel better. I didn't really have like a feeling where I was like, this is it, but like, you know, your brain is like, this has gotta be it, like, come on. We arrive at the store and I walk in. I'm about 10 minutes early, which, you know, I'm like, you can't be too early, but you also can't be like too on time. I don't really know. I'm walking in. You know that feeling that you're craving where you want it to make sense, like where it's like, this is it, this is the one. Well, I didn't have that feeling. Deep down, I was like, come on. Like I wanted to have that feeling where I was like, oh, this is the store, this is where I'm gonna work. I was still very optimistic. I walk in, there's a girl to the side. She's super cute. She's like, hi, you know. I'm like, hey, I have an interview. So she's like, you can go to the back and talk to Pablo. That's a fake name. That's not his real name. She's like, you can go talk to Pablo. He's at the counter. So I go to the counter and I'm like, hi, Pablo. I don't know where I got the name Pablo. So I'm like, hi, Pablo. I have an interview. He's not like giving me anything. He's just kind of like, okay, yeah, let me go to the back. And I'm like, okay. He goes to the back and he's like, Jordan. You know, so I'm like, okay, you know, it's cool. I go to the back and he's like, let's just say Susan, okay? He's like, Susan, here's Jordan. She's ready for her interview or whatever. She's like, oh my gosh, hi, Jordan. Yeah, can you sit down over here for a sec? I need to do a couple of things. And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, I'm sitting in the back in this weird, like, dusty corner, like, which is fine. Like, the back of stores normally aren't cute. So finally, after waiting, she comes out and she has, like, a few papers in her hand. And she looks at me and she's like, Deja? And I'm like, no, I'm Jordan, you know, hi, I'm Jordan. And she was like, and she's like looking through her papers. Well, she has like 2 papers, you know, and I don't know. So she has like 2 papers and she's like, oh, there you are, Jordan. Sorry. She sits down and she gets my resume and she's looking at it and she's like, okay, so I see here that you don't have a lot of experience. So she leads off of that, which I'm used to hearing that. I've only had 2 jobs in my life. Each one I spent about 2 years at and none of them were at a mall or at a store. They were all very like background leadership roles. So I've never worked like a cash register, nothing. Okay, but in my head I'm like, isn't that like level A work? Like, so she's like, I can see you have no experience. And so she was like, so do you have a job right now? And I'm like, no, I don't have a job right now. I'm currently looking. And she like cuts me off and she's like, oh, Jordan, no, Jordan. Like, it was so awkward. I didn't know what to do. And praise the Lord, I had a mask on because underneath my mask, I was like, so she's like, oh no, Jordan, okay, well, and I was like, yeah, I don't have a job. Why would I be here if I had a job? So she's like, well, have you applied anywhere? And I'm like, oh yeah, I've applied to a couple places. I applied to Urban Outfitters. I applied to Anthropology, you know, and I'm just listing a couple stores that I've applied to. And she's like writing stuff down and she's like, huh. And I was like, yeah. And so then she's like, well, here's the thing. I don't want to hire anybody that jumps from job to job. We're looking for somebody who's stable and will actually stay. We're not interested in people who want to just come and go. And so in my head, I'm like, how did she segue from like places that I've applied to places like, I just don't know how she got from that to that. And so I was like, and I'm very confrontational, okay? Oh, no. Like, I did not, you know, I have only worked 2 jobs in my life, each over 2 years. I'm very loyal. loyal employee. You know, I didn't work at those jobs I applied for. You know, like, I'm not somebody who jumps from job to job. I plan on staying here for like probably 2 years because I'm still in school, all this stuff. And so she's like, okay, you know, whatever. And so then she's like, so tell me about yourself. Why do you want a job? And I was just kind of like, why do I want a job? Like, normally I feel like they word it like, why do you want this job? Why did you apply here? But she was like, why do you want a job? And so I'm kind of just like, okay, how do I answer this? You know, like, why do I want a job? And so then before I can even answer, she cuts me off and she's like, do you have bills? Which I'm wording it exactly the way she said it, y'all. So she's like, do you have bills? And I was like, yeah, I have bills. Everybody has bills. So I'm like, yeah, I have bills. She was like, where do you get your money? Like, what do you? And I was like, so I'm married. And she's like, you're married? She's like, how old are you? Like, the way she was talking was just very like talking down on me. So it was super uncomfortable, like not very welcoming. I don't know what I did to step on her toes. I don't know if she pulled me in to just give me some lessons, but it gets worse from here. So just stick with me. So she's like, how old are you? And so I'm like, oh, you know, I'm 20. I have a husband. Like, I'm used to this. Like, oh, you have a husband? Then she's like, your money comes from your husband. And I was like, his income is the main income. Yes, you know, pretty much covers all of our bills and all this stuff. And then she was like, your husband pays your bills. And she writes something down. And I was like, huh? You know, like, what? And she was like, oh, your husband pays the bills. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I thought you said your husband paid your bills. What does he do? You know, it was just so awkward. And finally, I think she realizes, like, this has nothing to do with the interview. Finally, she's like, okay, well, what brought you to us? And I'm like, oh, you know, my mom, she has a small business. It's faith-based. And she's like, oh, our business is faith-based. And I'm like, yeah, that's what brought me here. I really want to work for a company with integrity and just kind of like represent that company very well. She's not really saying much, which is fine, you know, whatever. And so she's like, so what do you know about the company? And I was like, oh, I know you guys are faith-based. So, you know, I just list things that are faith-based, which is, you know, supporting the word and, you know, just basically what a faith-based company is. And so she's like, okay, so what else? And I was like, before that, I had said a bunch of things that faith-based companies do because I worked for a faith-based company, and I guess she wasn't satisfied with my answer. And so at that point, she's like, okay, you need to realize that before you go into interviews, you need to research the company that you're working for. And I don't want you to work for us if you don't stand with some things that we support and we do, because people have worked here before, they don't like what we stand for, and they leave. And I don't want to deal with that. Which, it was fine that she had like a hard face on or whatever, but in my head I'm like, okay, what do you guys stand for that I wouldn't stand for? Like, I was getting kind of nervous. And so she's like, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna offer you the job, but you need to go and research the company and kind of just get a feel for who we are and all of this stuff. And then if you believe that this is something you still want to represent, then you call me, we'll get the paper set up, all this stuff. So at this point, I'm like, I'm feeling kind of weird because it's kind of like one of those, the ball is in my court, but it shouldn't be. And then also in my head, I was like, what do you guys stand for that, one, you can't tell me right now, and two, that it's so bad that people have left? You know what I mean? So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm about to have to do some research about the most controversial thing this company has done and see if it's a deal breaker. We get up or whatever, and she's like, go get my number from Pablo and call me. I'll be here till 5. In my head, I'm like, why couldn't you just give me your number? Okay. Anyway, I text my friend Natalie and I'm like, what do I do? So she's looking up stuff. I text Zach and he's looking up stuff. And Natalie is like trying to come up with something. She's like, do you think this is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that's it. Like, if it is, it's not that big of a deal. And so then I call her, all right? The call doesn't go through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? I was like, God, is this your way of saying like, this is not the job? And so finally she calls me back and I'm like, okay, here we go. She's calling me, you know, I got my phone and she's like, hello? Like, she's screaming. She's literally screaming at me. I'm like, oh, hi, it's Jordan. You just interviewed me about an hour ago or whatever. And she's like, how did you get my number? And I'm like, you told me to go get it from Pablo. Like, you told me to get your, she's like, hold on, I'm driving. So at that point, I'm like, like, what am I supposed to do? She's like, okay, sorry, I was driving. So, hi, you know, like, she sounds very flustered and very, like, confused. And I'm like, hi, it's Jordan. We just had our interview. I want to let you know that I looked more into the company and I definitely want to represent this company. I think I'd represent the brand well. But I did want to ask, you know, what were your concerns or anything that you think I wouldn't want to stand for? Because everything was good. And in my head, I'm like, she doesn't think I want to stand for this. Like, that's kind of insulting. She's like, no, yeah, it's just, the thing for me is it's your lack of experience in retail. And in my head, I'm like, why didn't you just say that instead of saying like, do you think you want to represent it? You know, like whatever. And she's like, the thing with the retail, Jordan, that you need to understand, I'm not gonna hire somebody who's just gonna frolic around and do nothing. I'm trying to hire somebody who's a hard worker and takes their job seriously. I've been in retail for 30 years, 30 plus years, and I've worked at many different companies. I know what I need and I know what it takes and all of this stuff. So in my head, I'm like, so you're pretty much saying you think I'm gonna frolic around your store and do nothing. And I was like, no, yeah, I understand. You know, I do want to let you know though, like I am a quick learner. I am a hard worker. And she's like, yeah, but here's the thing, Jordan. Since somebody came into their interview and didn't do their homework over the company, I just don't want to hire you and then you leave because you don't want to work for our company. At that point, when she said that, in my head, I was like already checked out. I was like, this is not the job for me. But you know, I'm letting her continue. And she was like, so yeah, that was my issue. You didn't do your homework and you don't have any experience. You saw my resume. You saw that I've never worked in a retail store. You called me 3 days after seeing my resume. You called me in. Did you call me in to let me know that the retail world is serious? I'm just kind of taking it in and I was like, okay, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. You know, I really just wanted to clear some concerns that you may have had with, you know, just my character. You know, I just wanted to clear the concerns just in case, you know, you just thought I wasn't a good fit for the company. And she was like, we don't discriminate. We don't discriminate on race or gender or nothing. So that was not the problem. And I'm like, when did I say that was the problem? But in my head, I'm like, she took that card. She saw that card and she took it and she's gonna tell everybody the story of the girl who went to the interview and thought she didn't get the job because she was black, when really I was not thinking that at all. So finally, I'm just like, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you have a great day and I hope you find the worker that you're looking for. And she's like, okay, thanks, bye. And then she hung up. Like, what? Like, what? That was the interview. She was very, here's the thing. I can respect a leader who lets you know that they're a leader. You know, you work for them. But the energy she was giving was, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm insulted that you came in here with 0 years and I'm gonna let you know that. I felt like I was called in there for her to basically do all of that. Like, she led the conversation off talking about my lack of experience. So right now, I'm just trusting the process, making light of situations. I've already cried all my tears over this situation, so that's why I felt so comfortable, like, just, you know, saying this story time. I feel like it's so funny looking back on it. If you enjoyed the story time, let me know if you want some more. And yeah, this is just me reminding you that if things don't go your way, it's because God has something greater for you. I can attest to that in so many different situations in my life. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day and I will see you in the next vlog. Bye!